Festival. Just a word, before, if I may, before we begin. Since March, we've paid out almost £1 million through the Authors Contingency Fund to help writers facing financial hardship due to the health crisis. But as the pandemic continues to impact author incomes and demand for grants continues, we want to be able to continue offering this emergency funding throughout the crisis and beyond. And if you'd like to help by donating to the Authors Contingency Fund, there should be an on-screen link now. We're a team of 3 in the prizes department. You'll shortly meet Robin, Teddy, and I'm Paula. There's a real rhythm to administering prizes and awards, and the 22 we look after, along with the Authors Foundation grants, keep us busy year-round. I've watched prizes grow more and more important in the literary calendar. When I worked in publishing as an editor, prizes were a rare, rather delirious happening. But what a difference they made to the author's profile and to book sales. Later, as a literary editor on a national newspaper, prizes, winners and judges and their squabbles, and we don't encourage any of that here, of course, proved natural topics for a feature. But it takes working behind the scenes at the SoA, finessing each prize and its particular needs from initiation to presentation to really understand their position in the book world.
So my name's Robin. I'm the Prizes and Awards manager. I've been at the SoA for about 2 years now, but my background is in bookselling. I worked for Blackwell's for over a decade, so I've been able to see the impact that prizes have kind of on the retail side of things before coming to the SoA. I was also a bookseller at Rising Star in 2019.
Hello, my name is Teddy McDonald. I am the awards assistant at the Society of Authors, so my role is to assist Paula and Robin with the delivery of the prizes, which I've been doing for the past 7 months. I began my time at the Society just at the beginning of March, so just before the pandemic struck. Prior to this, I worked as a freelance copy editor.
Okay, so just to get started, what we'll do first is go through the prizes that we have with a little bit more information. We have 2 main deadlines for the SoA prizes that are in the 31st of October and the 30th of November. So closing in the 31st of October, so that's the deadline that's coming towards us quite swiftly now. One of the first ones is the ALCS Tom Galen Trust Award for a short story. So this is, you must have had a short story published or accepted for publication in the past, but this can be in print or online, and the story itself can be published or unpublished, so it's nice and inclusive. We also have the Eric Gregory Awards closing on this date for a poetry collection by a poet under 30. There are no publication history requirements for the Eric Gregory, so it's really aimed at emerging writers, which is why it was founded in 1960 by Dr. Eric Gregory for the encouragement of young poets. Past winners who obviously won it when they were under 30 include Seamus Heaney in 1966, Carol Ann Duffy in 1984 and Jackie Kay in 1991. So it's also a great prize to look at if you're looking at people who might be the big names in poetry in the future. Finally, on closing on the 31st of October, we have the Mckittrick Prize. This prize is also for emerging writers, but those authors that might have come to writing slightly later in life. So it's for debut authors over 40. These can be traditionally published, they can be self-published, or they can be unpublished. So it's really open to everyone.
We stagger prize deadlines, as Robin says, to enable all the procedures pre-sending out to chosen judges to be manageable. The Betty Trask Prize and Awards close for entry on November the 30th, so plenty of Christmas reading for the judges. Betty Trask lived deep in Somerset. Her first novel was called The Cotton Glove County in 1928 and was a great success. She wrote just about 30 romantic novels up to 1957 when she stopped. But she left the Society of Authors a wonderful bequest, which has been rewarding young first novelists writing fiction, romantic or not, for the past 37 years. The SoA looks after this fund, amongst many others, and so we'll be celebrating first fiction by writers under 35 for a long time to come. Paul Torday published his first novel, Salmon Fishing in the Yemen, when he was 60, and his family wanted to celebrate his life by funding an award that promoted the work of later starters. Oh, sorry, I had a little note to say my connection was low, but I hope you can hear me.
We can still hear you. Your camera dropped out, but do carry on.
Yes, I will. As I say, his family, his sons, wanted to celebrate his life by funding an award that promoted the work of later starters. It's one of our newer prizes and looks for fine first novels by writers of 60 and over. The prize is only 2 years old, but thriving, and already its first winners are well into writing further fiction.
So the Queen's Knickers Award is one of our newest awards as well. It was awarded for the first time in June of this year. The inspiration behind the prize was to seek out books that have a characteristic quirkiness or oddness, which is something the prize's founder, Nicholas Allen, believed wasn't celebrated enough in children's literature and is something that children particularly seek out in their books. The prize goes to an outstanding children's original illustrated book for ages 0 to 7. And the Somerset Maugham Awards have been running since 1947, making them some of our oldest awards. They're awarded to writers of poetry, fiction or non-fiction below the age of 35 for the purpose of foreign travel, so to enrich the writing of these writers by giving them experience in foreign countries.
Questions that often come up. All our prizes are open to all and any writers. SoA membership is not a requisite, although obviously many SoA members do enter the prizes.
We also get asked a lot, is there a fee to enter? The question for all of our prizes is no. There is never a cost to enter any of our prizes. There's also no additional fee at shortlisting or long listing stage for authors or for publishers.
Can I enter multiple prizes? Well, the answer is yes. As long as you're eligible, you can enter as many prizes as you wish. So there are some prizes that stipulate you can only submit a single entry per year, such as the Tom Galen Trust Award. But if you wanted to submit a poetry collection to the Eric Gregory Awards, as well as a short story to the Tom Galen Trust Award and an unpublished manuscript to the Betty Trask Award, that would be fine, assuming you're eligible for each of these prizes.
Well, the awards close for submissions in October and November, and then it's the judging process. This usually concludes in the spring of the following year, at which point we contact all the shortlisted authors either directly or via their publishers. We also can contact all authors who've to notify them we also can contact all authors who've submitted to the prize to notify them if they have not won the prize.
So some people ask, if my publisher has entered my book, will I be notified? So we only ever contact the person who has completed our entry form and entered their details and submitted the book. That means that even if your book has been submitted by your publisher, we're not going to be able to discuss the entry with you. This is often done by publishers to kind of avoid any potential disappointment for authors. And generally, the best thing would be to speak to your publisher directly about whether they're submitting your book to a prize. Some of them have different rules. It's all very much down to your relationship. If you are the person who has submitted your book, we will, of course, always get in touch with you, as Paula just said.
Is there a limit to the number of entries a publisher can make to any of the prizes? No. A publisher can submit the work of as many authors as they wish to the awards.
Well, this is a question. Our prizes and awards are enabled for the most part by the generous support of multiple sponsors. These might be bequests left in wills, ongoing donations by individuals, or support by organisations such as ALCS or the British Council. Talking about bequests, thinking about our Eric Gregory Awards and Somerset Maugham Awards, the eligibility criteria is set out in a dense legal document. And as trustees of the fund, obviously the Society of Authors has a responsibility to uphold the spirit and aims of each prize. For these two prizes, this aim is the support and encouragement of young writers. In the case of ongoing donations, as with the Paul Torday Memorial Prize, The age restriction of over 60 is really the essence of the prize, celebrating authors coming to writing later in life in honour of Paul Torday. We're always looking to expand our prizes and awards into areas we feel where there may be a lack of representation. Our efforts are ongoing to suffice funding for new prizes and awards to continue celebrating and supporting new and diverse publishing.
So which of our prizes are open to unpublished authors? We currently have 3 prizes that can be submitted to if you are unpublished. So that's the Betty Trask for a debut novel by an author under 35. The Mckittrick, which is for a debut novel by an author over 40. And the Eric Gregory, which is for a poetry collection by a poet under 30.
Why some of your prizes are not open to self-published books? Basically, the starting point for any new prize is always the specific aspect of creativity that we're seeking to celebrate with that prize. And then eligibility criteria must be introduced just to control the number of entries, basically, to enable the prize to function. Otherwise, it would just be too difficult to administer. So the eligibility criteria for the prizes are dictated by the aims of the individuals and organisations who are contributing funds in dialogue with the Society of Authors. Self-published books currently accepted by the Mckittrick Prize, and unpublished manuscripts are accepted by this and the Betty Trask Prize and Awards. And as Robin has just mentioned, the Eric Gregory Awards also accept unpublished poetry collections and have no requirement of previous publication.
The Betty Trask Prize and Awards are generously funded, as previously mentioned, by a bequest by the late Betty Trask, and the terms and conditions for them are set out in her will. This is actually drawn directly from the legal document and states that the prize, awards or grants shall be conditional on the submission on behalf of a candidate author as his or her sole work of a romantic novel or other novel of a traditional rather than an experimental nature, as the Society may from time to time by regulation specify. This doesn't mean that submissions must be romance novels, although they can be, but rather that they must not be of an experimental nature.
So answers to these FAQs and lots more can be found on the SoA website. But if you have any questions specific to yourself, you can always pop a question in the chat and we'll be going to those at the end. Or you can always get in touch with us either directly, we'll put our contacts up at the end with our emails, or we have a general prizes inbox, which is prizes@societyofauthors.org.
So Mckittrick Prize is one of our debut author winners this year. He won a Betty Trask Award for his warm social comedy, The Private Joys of Nina Maloney. In the words of Judge Eleanor Dimmock, there is a beautifully judged interplay between past and present in Mckittrick Prize's The Private Life of Nina Maloney. Well put together and very funny, this is a satisfying novel by a writer with huge potential. By way of a generous kaleidoscope of carefully drawn relationships, it's intensely moving too.
I recently had an entry application from an 11-year-old, and the scope of our prizes is as wide as we can make it. The Chumley Awards are a case in point. As the Eric Gregory Awards have a great reputation for picking out the best young poets, so the Chumley Awards reward experienced poets for their body of work. And it's a mark of celebration when wonderful poets win this award for poetic achievement. Often previous winners of the prizes love to come back and judge the awards, which is a lovely connection.
So alongside administering the prizes, this team also works on the Authors Foundation and K. Blundell Trust, which is also called our Work in Progress grants. So we give money out to authors who are writing a new book. This can either be something that they're planning or something that they actually have a contract for, and we give about £360,000 each year. Just going to put up some more information about these so you can see roughly what the eligibility criteria are. So basically they're twice yearly to writers who are previously published by or are currently under contract with a UK publisher on non-contributory contracts. These grants assist writers with research costs or buying time to write, and we support writers from a range of genres and styles and at all stages of their literary careers. We have just changed our deadlines for these, so that's something that if you have been looking at them in the past, it's good to refamiliarise yourself with. So the new deadlines are the 1st of February, and you'll likely receive funds if you're successful in May, and the 1st of July, and you'll receive funds if you're successful in October for that.
Along with the Authors Foundation, the K. Blundell grants are also awarded twice yearly. They're open to writers under the age of 40 whose book project will lead to the greater understanding of social and economic organisations. And the applicants also need to have written a previous book, which they can send in as an ebook or PDF. And if it's a hard copy, we will return it. We often get asked what funding can be used for any of the following things. Time to write, such as taking time off if you're a freelance, or other paid work because you want to write. Basic living costs, and the fund can be used for rent, utilities, childcare while you're writing. And research trips, so that you can go to any location or do archival research and fund that. If you don't know what your plans are for funding, please get in touch with us at funding@societyofauthours.org, and we'll be happy to discuss the specifics of your application with you.
So we also get asked what the focus of an application to the Authors Foundation should be. So really the work itself is the most important thing, because this isn't necessarily a hardship grant similar to our emergency fund funding that we'll talk about later. The most important thing is what you're writing. So if you can give a synopsis, if you have one, if not, it would be good to discuss themes, where the direction of your work is going, and why you think it's important that it's funded. It's basically your opportunity to sell your work to the assessors, so that really should be the bulk of your application.
So the answer to this one is yes, you're still eligible for the fund, but it's generally recommended to apply for funding in advance of incurring costs.
There isn't a word count for any application, but we do say that there should be a maximum of 10 pages, and that will include any reviews, letters of support, or samples of writing.
We also get asked as what counts as costs of publication. This is because costs of publication can't be covered by the Authors Foundation grant. So this could be anything from image rights, cover design, editing, proofreading, printing, or buying copies of your books from publishers. That would count as a publication cost, and so we wouldn't be able to offer you any funding to cover those kind of costs. If you had specific questions, as Paula has said, the best thing to do is to get in touch with us directly, and that is funding@societyofauthours.org.
So I think, as Paula mentioned, you can use the fund for mentor support, but this has to be specifically to aid your work in progress. So it can't be generally just to hone your craft. It should also be mentioned that we usually run specific grants for residential stays, but due to COVID, applications to these have been suspended. We do hope to be accepting them again, but realistically, it probably won't be until midway through 2021 at least.
You can apply if you've received a grant 4 years after you can then reapply after 4 years. That's to the Authors Foundation and the K. Blundell Trust. So that means, for instance, if you received funds this autumn of 2020, you'd have to wait until the spring of 2025 to reapply.
So some people also ask that if they have previously been awarded a grant, does that affect the likelihood of them being successful again? And the short answer here is no. It shouldn't affect it, because as we've mentioned, the most important thing is the work that you're applying for. So that's what it will be judged on. It will be on its own merit. We do ask you to give information about having received grants in the past in your application, just in case, it's because it gives some nice background information to the assessors, but it shouldn't affect your new application just having received funds, because it will be for a completely different project.
So all applicants, whether successful or not, are contacted with the decision of the assessors, but we're unable to give individual feedback for applications, unfortunately.
You can only apply to the fund once each year, and your application should be focused on a single work in progress. So that's the answer to the numbers of projects, just the one. But if you have a co-author, that's absolutely fine, as long as you both fulfill all the other eligibility criteria. If you're applying with a co-author, please send just the one application for your work in progress, which will be from the both of you.
So, as with all of our other points, there is these FAQs and other FAQs on our website, but we're always willing to talk through applications either on the phone or via email. I know that a lot of people with these kind of grants feel much more comfortable having an actual chat to somebody, and we're always here and willing to listen.
The impact of the Authors Foundation is, well, as you can see from some of these comments from successful authors, the impact is extraordinary. You can see the kind of response we often get, and the grants and special awards within the grants are such a boost to writers, often coming just at the right moment to fund a special piece of research or simply to offer writing time. It's wonderful to hear what good things these grants can achieve and the sense of esteem they confer on working writers.
So the Authors Emergency Fund is a new initiative by the SoA, which has been launched in response to the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. Financial resources have been generously contributed by a number of organisations, such as the Authors Licensing and Collecting Society, the Royal Literary Fund, T.S. Eliot Foundation in partnership with English Pen and Amazon UK. The SoA has then sought to distribute these funds to writers in need as writers continue to be particularly hard hit by the pandemic crisis. So this is an initiative that I've been assisting in with this year, as my jobs need to adapt to the changing landscape in the book world, as has the jobs of quite a few people at the SoA. We've been working as a team to process the applications and as they come in, and just make sure that they're suitable or eligible, and clarifying anything important to the assessors, who then have the final decision and decide how funds are distributed based on need. So the eligibility criteria is effectively the same as for SoA for membership. Basically, applicants need to have had a book or a number of articles published, a play or a programme published or produced professionally, or be self-published and selling over 300 print or 500 ebooks per year. So in other words, making a profit. They must be British subject or UK resident, and must also have an income from writing or writing related activities that amounts to a substantial amount of annual income.
The financial requirement here, the emergency fund asks that, or offers, financial help to support authors impacted financially by the growing health crisis and to assist their current difficulty.
So in terms of expenses that you can't apply for, basically the key element is always need. So it could be in response to loss of income owing to the pandemic, but there's also it's also always available for temporary hardship. So that could be for a boiler, for a laptop, for a car, for a domestic bill. The important thing is need. So please do apply, and we'll always get back to you and let you know whether your particular requirement meets the eligibility criteria. There's also a specific fund for over 35s born in the UK living with chronic illness and disability.
So the answer to question 3 is effectively the answer to question 2 as well. But yeah, just to clarify, this was originally the contingency fund. So its main recourse was just temporary hardships faced by authors, but obviously now it's encompassing the fallout of the pandemic, loss of income tends to be from this tends to be its main initiative, but you can apply for either.
Literary income, the key phrase here is those for whom author-related activities make up a substantial amount of their annual income. This is obviously open to all types of writers, illustrated, literary translators, script writers, poets, journalists, and others.
So how to apply, there's an application form on our website, and you send that along with a covering letter to grants@societyofauthors.org. It usually takes about 2 weeks for us to get back to you, and this can be longer if there's a high volume, which we obviously were experiencing at the start of the pandemic. All of these applications are then independently assessed by teams of writers in strict confidence.
Can I apply again? Unfortunately not, just because the grant is under too much pressure.
It isn't possible, I'm afraid, to ask for a grant if you've been awarded a grant from Arts Council England's Emergency Fund. You can only apply once to one of these funds. This is because the Arts Council contributed to the Emergency Fund.
So in terms of the size of the grants, they're usually up to £2,000. The average grant is £1,400. And the authors, the grant supporting authors living with disability and chronic illness, those grants are slightly larger with up to £3,000.
So again, just to reiterate, there's more detail on how to apply on the SoA website.
So just to give a little quick mention to some other awards that aren't actually managed by this team, but by some of our colleagues, which is the Imerston and Tinniswood Awards. So these are for new and outstanding achievement in UK audio drama. They close in October, so they have just closed for this year, but it's well worth keeping an eye on them, and they'll be open in 2021. So these are all of our contacts. I'll leave these up until the end of the session, just so you can jot them down if you did want to get in touch with us about anything that we've said today or any additional questions that you might have. It's myself, Paula, and Teddy in the prizes department. Teddy can also be contacted for the emergency fund. Our colleague Sarah Baxter also deals with that. And then for the Imerston and Tinniswood that I just popped up on the screen, the Audio Drama Awards, that's our colleagues Sophia and Theo. I can see that there are some questions in the chat, but just before we go to those, we did have a question sent in ahead of time, which we'll do first, by Helen Johnson. So she asked, how can a competitor research the judges of a prize to get an idea of what sort of work they like? There are the submission guidelines, but they're often vague, such as work from people of colour or northern women. How can a writer discover what the judges might be looking for? Paula, did you want to?
Sorry, just I was reading the questions, so you had to answer it yourself there.
Okay. So our advice on this one would be that we do a judges announcement, so you can have a look at the judges that will be judging each prize. Our prizes are all judged by writers, so you can have a look at their own work as well as the work that they seem to favour, but we have past winners on our website. But really, the best thing to do would be to write the best thing that you possibly can, and the thing that you want to write, and then to see afterwards if that might fit in with something that one of our prizes is kind of promoting. It's not necessarily the best idea to try and write something specifically for a judge, because it's also subjective. I just don't think that you'd ever really be able to do that with much success. So you can have that, there will be an announcement, so you can check in with what you think they might like, but the best thing to do would be to write what you like, write it to your best of your ability, and then submit it to a prize that seems to fit it. So I've got some more in the chat, so I'll just go through those as well, because I've got a little bit of time left. I think this might, unless it's a different Helen Johnson, we have another one from Helen Johnson in the chat, which is it worth going in for prizes that charge for entry? Strikes me as make work for the organisers.
Oh, well, I mean, it's worth going in to a prize if you want to enter it, but I do, we are very particular and proud that we are able not to charge for award to our prizes. But that doesn't mean to say that there aren't some fantastic prizes. I'm not going to sort of name names, but there really are lovely short story competitions that don't have a huge entry charge, and you will obviously make your own decision about what you enter.
So the next one is from Claire Watts, who says, if you've self-published a novel but never had a traditionally published book, are you eligible for prizes for debuts? So this will be to do with the Betty Trask and the Mckittrick. So for the Mckittrick Prize, both of them, in fact, unfortunately, if you have self-published a book, because that book that was self-published would be eligible for the prize, that would count as your debut, and you wouldn't be able to submit an unpublished manuscript or a traditionally published book to the prize after that. For other prizes, for example, the Paul Torday, because the Paul Torday is only open to traditionally published novels, your self-published book wouldn't count as your debut there. So you would be able to submit to that prize if you then had a traditionally published book later on, if that makes sense. The next one is from Paula Greenlees. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Just saying, please can you qualify unpublished for debut novels? My debut will be published in February of next year. So, Paula, did you want to answer that one? I don't know if have we still got you, Paula?
Yeah, well, I'm feeling a little bit out of it, I have to say. I'm so sorry about this. It's terrible. Unpublished, in a sense, is a book that has not been traditionally published.
Yeah. So I think when you say that your debut will be published in February of next year, our advice would likely be to wait until it's published and submit it then, because you'll obviously want it to be the best version of itself. So that will be when it's gone through your kind of final editing stages, etc. Whereas if you apply, and if you wouldn't want to submit it as kind of unpublished before it's released, because then, you know, it might not be completely finished in terms of being a final project, and you wouldn't be able to submit it as a traditionally published book if you've already submitted it as a manuscript, because that would essentially be submitting the same book twice.
I mean, we do often have discussions with publishers because they're dying to put a book in and they've got the proofs and it's ready. But it really, I think often the decision goes that it's better to wait for the following entry point and put a traditionally a properly published book, a finally published book in.
The next one we've got is Christina Julius, who says, any funding or awards for academic and non-fiction authors?
Well, shall I? Well, I'll just.
I can't see you, Paula. I don't want to jump. Oh, there you're back. Brilliant.
No, sorry. Obviously, the Authors Foundation will fund books that are moving towards of general interest, and very, very keen on non-fiction authors. Hugely welcome. But we do have one of our children's prizes, the ALCS prize, which actually it looks for children's non-fiction work, or that's an opportunity. Any thoughts?
We also have the Somerset Maugham Awards, which are open to non-fiction as well. And another prize that we administer that's kind of not one of our family prizes, but we still work on, is the Sunday Times University of Warwick Young Writer of the Year Award, which is also open to non-fiction. Okay, and then finally we have one from Juliana Mensa, who said, will there be a debut fiction prize for writers who are over 35 but under 40? I think you have spotted the slight gap in our prizes currently. Yeah, I think we would love to have one. The question for us is always regarding funding for prizes, which I think you will agree with, Paula.
I totally agree with that. We do need the funding, but we absolutely are always on the lookout for new prizes that will fulfil another area of interest that isn't currently covered.
Exactly. she's just said I had to ask.
Yes, you did have to ask. Quite right.
I think that's everything we've got from questions in the chat. Thank you to everyone for coming along today. Sophia has actually also popped in a link to the Audio Drama Awards in the chat, so you can have a look there as well. And our Francesca, who is moderating behind the scenes, has also put in a link to the Society of Authors Award winners that you can buy their books from Blackwell's in a kind of virtual bookstore, and that is actually linked to our contingency fund. So any books that you buy by that link, we actually get a small contribution from Blackwell's that goes towards the emergency funds to help other authors in need. So if there's no further questions, and yes, you can also donate, so there's other links in the chat as well.
Yes.
I think that's all from us in that case. As we said, please do always get in touch if you have questions. We're very happy to answer them. I know that sometimes things can be look a little confusing when you're reading them on a web page, and we're also always available to chat on the phone if you have further questions. But otherwise, I think that's it.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you.